some staff techniques, and I'll explain what that is when I've done it. Okay.
Is it okay?
Yeah, it's fine. Okay. There. All right. So Gary, thanks for making the time to see me. This is going to take about an hour and a half. Have you got that much time?
That's fine.
Okay. Have you had a cup of tea?
Yes.
All right, so basically what I want to do today is just try to find out what's happened that has meant that you've had to come and see me today. Just before you start talking, I just want to go through a couple of principles around how this session particularly will work, and also to explain a bit about mediation. Okay, so VC and N, and blah 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 about the mediation process. All the usual stuff. Have you got any questions about that?
No.
Okay. So Gary, I'm wondering whether if we spend a bit of time now just hearing about what the issues are from your point of view, what's happened that has meant you need to come and see me.
Well, I'm here because of Bronwyn. She's just lost the plot a little bit.
Yeah.
We've been married 25 years, and she's just a bit emotional, and she left me. And she left me, and she wants to take the kids. And now she's putting me through all this process of separation, and I don't get it. I think she'll be back once she comes to her senses. She'll be back.
And so coming here today, or being part of this process, is not your choice.
No, well, I'm happy in my relationship. I didn't have any issues with my relationship. It's all her.
So is there any? So what's your hope for me?
Well, that I hope that you can get her to see, what she's doing. And hopefully, she comes back and she'll see basically how emotional and erratic she's been, and she'll come back to the family.
So from your point of view, the only reason why you're here is really because Bronwyn's being emotional and erratic.
That's right.
And that if somehow I can work some sort of magic, that I can stop that, and then everyone will get back to home together again.
Yeah, well, you know what women are like.
No, I really, I find no, I don't. What about if you just move on from that though, and just think about, well, if you were in this mediation process, what you would like to get out of it? What would be one goal that you would say, I'm here because I want to get something out of it?
Well, I want to see my kids, and I'm quite a successful businessman in the community, and I own a lot of assets, and I've worked hard to get those assets.
Okay, so you want to see your kids, and then you started talking about assets. Are you concerned about the assets?
Well, she seems to think she can have some claim to the house and the cars, but she's been a stay-at-home mum for the last 25 years, and I've been the one working the 12-hour days and working hard and building the business.
Okay.
So I don't think she's got much of a claim to that.
Okay. So if we start with the kids, and we'll come back to the assets in a moment. So just tell me, I don't know too much about your family. So how many children do you have?
We've got two. We've got Luke, who's 13, and then we have the girl, and she's 7. Sally.
And her name's
Sally.
Sally, and she's how old?
7.
7. Okay, so you've got Luke 13 and Sally 7. And you've been separated for how long?
2 weeks now.
Okay, so 2 weeks ago, everyone was together under the same roof, and then someone moved out. Was that you, or was that Bronwyn?
That was Bronwyn.
Okay, and so then Bronwyn moved out with the children.
Yes. She took my kids.
Okay, so when did you see the children last?
I haven't seen them since. I've talked to my son on the phone. That's about it.
Okay, so you haven't seen them at all?
No.
Okay, well, that can be really frustrating.
Yeah.
So how are you going with that?
Well, I miss them, and she's just being selfish. She doesn't understand how hard it is for me.
And so from your point of view, not being able to see the children it sounds like it's really sad. It's really difficult.
Well, they're my kids. I I'm especially close to my boy. He wants to be with me. He's told me so on the phone, and she's just stopping that.
Okay,
I'm paying for them.
So one of the things that you could come into this mediation for would be to try to get some time with the children while we work out what the future is of your relationship, whether Bronwyn's going to come home or not. Like it sounds like you're thinking that she will eventually come home, but while you're waiting for that, you're not getting to, the children aren't getting to spend any time with you.
No, that's right.
Okay, so one of the things you'd like to talk about is that.
Yes.
So take a pause. What am I doing?
You're trying to get him.
You're locking in on the present topic, agenda topics.
Yeah, but I'm not in the mediation, but I am in the pre. What am I doing with Gary's story?
Well, you're letting him talk anywhere, whenever he wants. Oh, sorry, just thinking.
That's okay. Like it's very simple. I'm not disagreeing with him. So my goal is not to disagree with Gary's discourse.
So you're building a relationship with him.
I am
so before you
engaging.
start
There's a few articles around about them. They're about engaging with involuntary clients. So when the court orders that someone do a process like counselling and that kind of thing, people have done research into how the hell do you do counselling with someone who doesn't want to be in the room. And when you're engaging with someone like Gary, who is saying, you know what, I'm here because I have to be, because Bronwyn's set this thing up, I prefer not to be. I don't engage with Gary about incidental or peripheral things. So I don't say, so Gary, did you watch the footy last night? Did you watch the game between Queensland and New South Wales?
Absolutely.
Right. Because Gary will say, how much am I paying for this session? Why do you want to know whether I watched the TV last night? Gary, did you find the place okay? Well, I'm here. You know, of course I found the place okay. You think I'm an idiot? You know, he's not going to... Engaging with Gary is actually through his story, not through chit-chat stuff. So I might, with Bronwyn, I might say, so Bronwyn, welcome to our centre. Did you find the place okay? I know it's quite difficult to get a parking spot. Did you find that okay? And Bronwyn was, it was a bit of a, yeah, it was hard because Bronwyn's a voluntary client and she doesn't mind having a bit of chit chat. And she might say, you know, I was actually in the area today because I was catching up with a friend. I thought I'd see a friend while I was over here. So I got here a little bit early, which I'm really glad I did because it was so hard to find your office. Yeah, we're actually going to put some signs up. We can have that whole chat. Gary walks in. Gary's found the place. He's here and he's here for business. And he just wants to talk about, I'm not seeing the kids and I'm scared she's going to take my house away from me. And she's not going to do it. It's not going to happen. Okay? Now, remember how I said on the first day that the dominant discourse can be quite ugly. This is what I mean by it's not extremely ugly, but it's this kind of stuff of you know, I've worked 12-hour days to accumulate these assets and she's not going to get them. That's the ugliness of the dominant discourse. And if I deny that discourse, where I say, well, Gary, you know, surprise, you know, news for you, Gary, you're screwed. You're going to lose half your house. You know that, don't you? If not half more. That's not going to be a winning line for Gary. Right? I'm denying him his discourse. What I have to do with Gary early in the interview is just engage with him through his discourse. Okay? I'm just going to let him tell me the story, and I'm going to use summary, and I'm going to use questions that go around the onion. So, you know, the questions that just deepen the story, that just give me more information. Remember, I think we talked about it in our first week together, did we? That concept of going around the onion. We're staying on the same layer, and we're just gathering more information. And it's nice and safe. Gary cannot be challenged until he feels safe. He's got to feel like we've got a relationship. Now, what Bill did was, and it's probably because of what they wanted him to do on the tape, was he actually started the challenge so early that Gary started to do his clicky pen thing. Bill needed to spend more time building rapport. Bill went very quickly to, what's it like for Bronwyn to be in a conflict with you? That was way too early. All I'm doing right now is just listening to Gary's story. Okay? He knows he's got an hour and a half, and I don't care if he uses an hour to tell me all of the bibs and bobs of his life. He can go for it. All I'm doing is earning the right to be able to bring a challenge up to Gary. That's what I'm trying to achieve. Okay? So that's the first part of our interview with Gary. And Gary should feel, as should every single client we meet, that he has been heard. Part of the reason why we have a men's movement that is so angry in our family law sector, and they are super angry, is because we practitioners have not created the space for the male discourse to be allowed. And the part of the problem is that the male discourse is so ugly that we don't want to, we don't like it. You know, Gary goes on with all this tripe about, I own all these assets and she's not going to get one of them. And you feel like, well, Gary, shut up. You know, that's not the way our system works. And as soon as I do that, which is what the majority of practitioners do, I've lost him. Okay? So, do you want to, we'll fast forward a little bit, is that okay? Was that a useful thing? Any questions or comments? Okay, so Gary, I've understood that the first thing you really want to do is to spend some time with children, to have some face-to-face time with your kids.
Yeah, particularly my boy.
Particularly for your boy, who's with you. Yeah, okay. And then you said before, I'd just like to come back to this, that the reason why it's not occurring is because of because Bronwyn's getting in the way.
Yeah.
She's stopping it from occurring.
That's right.
Okay, so can I ask you some questions about that? Has there been anything between you and Bronwyn that would lead her to stop the children spending time with you?
That's just the typical, she's flighty and just emotional and she would just fly off the handle and she runs to her mother's.
Okay. So she's run to her mother's and you said she's flighty and emotional. I'm wondering whether there's anything more, whether there's anything that has happened that has meant that Bronwyn has a concern about the children spending time with you that you can think of.
No, I'm an excellent father. I take Luke for soccer.
Yep.
I help Sally.
Yep.
She's handicapped,
Okay.
so I'll take her to physio appointments. I'm a good dad. Sometimes I think she might be jealous by that.
Okay, so the only reason why you think that she might be stopping the children spending time with you is that she could be jealous. Okay. If Bronwyn was sitting in here right now and she was hearing you say that, would she agree with you that it's about jealousy?
She'd probably just fly off the handle.
What would she say?
She'd probably just say, you're wrong and you're not a good dad and just all this rubbish. It's all nonsense.
Okay, but what would be an example that she would use of why she thinks you're not a good dad?
She'll say that I'm too hard on the kids, But kids these days they need boundaries and discipline. She's too soft.
Right. So she would say you're too hard on the kids. You would say it's just good discipline.
Yeah, like Sally, she's got a disability. Bronwyn mollycoddles her, but just because she's got a disability doesn't mean she should, have all this special treatment. She's a normal kid. Just let her be a normal kid. I let her do that.
Okay, so you two disagree about how to raise, say, Sally, and that's where one disagreement is. And she might talk about that as being a reason why she doesn't want the children to spend time with you.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think there's anything else? Now, I'm pushing the limits. I've now done my 3 questions. I'm going to try once more. Do you think there's any other reason why she would say the children shouldn't spend time with you?
No. I mean, I'm a good father. I'm a good provider. I'm a good husband. I don't know why she's doing all this.
So pause. Okay. So time out. Now what if I've already done my interview with Bronwyn? What do I know?
That there was incident where he hit her on the floor and she was in hospitalised.
So if I keep on saying, come on Gary, there must be something else, he knows that I've already seen Bronwyn, and he's going to start to get really edgy. Okay. Now this is bad, then that becomes badgering of Gary. At the moment, I need to treat Gary as best I can, like he's the first person I've spoken to. The fact that he is not telling me about the incident is information for me. I don't have to get him to tell me about the incident. Okay, that's not the goal. The goal is just to let Gary tell me his story, but create the sense that actually I already expect that Bronwyn will have an alternate story. So Gary has said the reason why she doesn't want the children to spend time with him is because she's jealous. And I said, well, if Bronwyn was in the room and she heard you say that, would she agree with you that it's all about the jealousy? Okay, so I asked him that same. It's a little bit more savvy than the Bill question of what do you think Bronwyn would say it's like to be in an argument with you. I've just stayed exactly with where the client is. He says that it's because she's jealous. Would Bronwyn agree with that? Exactly the same strategy, but a little bit more precise. If she was in the room right now, is that what she would say? Would she say that it's because she's jealous of you? And he's going to say, well, no, she wouldn't say that. Yeah, of course he's going to say no. And well, what would she say? So I'm just having this chat with him. We're just walking together. And my sense is he hasn't felt this need to go clicky with his pen. He hasn't felt like he's been, that I have become so confrontational that he needs to become defensive. That defensiveness is me losing the ability to be a benefit to the case at the moment. I need to just be a little bit more savvy with that. Questions and comments?
So if he gets defensive, he'll back off and just start following.
As soon as I get a bit of resistance, I'm going to back off. Okay? And I'm going to then, but not just back off. So he's giving me a message of don't get too close, buddy. Then I'm going to rebuild by doing a summary of what he has told me. So summarising builds the relationship. Challenge is a withdrawal from the relationship. So it's like we've got a bank account. And when I challenge Gary, it's a withdrawal from the bank account. When I do a summary, I'm putting investment into the bank account. And I've got to continue to keep that bank account in the positive. Okay, I've really got to work hard to do that. Far harder with Gary than I do with Bronwyn. Now, there's one of the things that I think is really important in this interview with Gary is this thing called SCARF. Do you want? So it's come out of roll from that. Do you want to turn it on?
Yeah, thank you.
Now, SCARF comes from some stuff by a guy called David Rock. I think his name is Rock. And I always smile because I've never heard of someone called Rock before, but it's a good name.
Chris Rock.
I think his name is Richard Rock or David Rock. I've forgotten his first name. But he came up with this concept of SCARF. And SCARF talks about the amygdala. You know, did we talk about the amygdala in that first subject? And what happens when someone's amygdala gets triggered?
It's flares up.
Fight or flight. So we get that little part of the brain in the limbic system of the brain called the amygdala, and it triggers a fight or flight response. What does it do to the cerebral cortex?
Switches it off.
Yep. So that turns off. There is no ability to reason. We can't ask someone to stay in a rational discussion. And it turns on the freeze, fight or flight response, and the person becomes aggressive or storms out and leaves and runs away. So these people become lizards, okay, lizard-like. There's no point in talking. Now, Gary was starting to get his amygdala triggered when he started to go clicky with his pen. SCARF is a language. If we imagine a scarf as being a scarf, so we've got a scarf here. When the scarf comes up, that's the metaphor that this guy's talking about, is that when the scarf is coming up, the amygdala is getting triggered. And so his theory is there is a language, a scarf language, that can help someone's amygdala to be calmed. So they actually don't get triggered. Or if they are getting triggered, they start to feel as if they can calm down. They can calm their amygdala. S stands for status. What's Gary's status?
He's a big successful businessman.
He's a businessman, and in terms of his family, he is,
He's the
Head of the family.
yeah, and he is a
Mile. Breadwinner.
father.
Father.
Okay? Why do so many men get pissed off with the family law system? Because no one acknowledges the importance of their role as a father and the importance of fathers in children's lives. You know, all of the 2006 changes to the Family Law Act calmed the amygdalas of heaps of men because someone said fathers are important. And if I want Gary to be calmed, when Gary says to me, Bronwyn took the kids and won't let me see them, to be able to say to him, and it sounds to me, Gary, like your role as father in the children's lives is really important. You get it, John. That's exactly right. Kids need their father. Okay, that's part of his discourse, and it's almost his alternate discourse. I just want to be a good father for my kids. Now, there's a little bit of coercive, controlling bullshit going on, but don't worry about that for now. Just pick up the concept that the S stands for status, and that it might be you're a successful businessman. And so what kind of things could I say to Gary, the successful businessman? What does he not want me to do? I'm a businessman, don't waste my time. Okay, so Gary, you're here for an hour and a half. If we can do this in a faster period of time, we will, because I know that you're probably really busy today.
Yes, I am.
I'm a very successful businessman. I'm very important. It's all of that kind of bullshitty talk, right? I've sat with a doctor, a clinical director in a workplace dispute. He said to me, look, I've only got 15 minutes to talk to you. An hour and a half later, he's sitting there saying, so what the hell do you think I should do? I'm saying, you only have 15 minutes to talk to me. Do you need to go? Is there someone dying who you need to go? I said, no, this is important. And so that status stuff actually engages people and it calms their amygdala. And so the next one here is for certainty. So what is bugging Gary right now in terms of the certainty? What does he not know? What is he uncertain about?
If Bronwyn comes back,
Yeah, if Bronwyn's going to come back or not.
If he gets to see his kids.
If he's going to see his kids.
if he will be able to keep all his
Is she going to rip me off? I need some certainty in my life. I want some clarity. And what mediation does is it creates this agreement. And so that will help him with his certainty. But even to say, from here today, Gary, what will come out of today is you and I can start to work on whether you think and I think the case is appropriate for you to go to mediation. Whether it will help you or not. Because you know what, Gary? I'm not going to waste your time. I'm not going to put you through a process and then if I don't think it's got legs at the start, I'm not going to ask you to start this process. We'll find the right process for you. That creates certainty. And the client says, oh, yeah, that's good. Okay. A stands for autonomy. And autonomy is this sense of being able to be I can determine my own future. And so the reason why I push very, very hard not to tell clients what to do, not to put options on the table, to actually allow the clients to come up with their own solutions, is because that whole concept of empowerment that is central to mediation actually feeds into this sense of autonomy. Gary and Bronwyn deserve the power to be able to determine their own future. And that's what keeps a lot of clients out of court, because the judge will make the decision for them. So we want to make our own decision if we can. R stands for relationship. And being able to acknowledge to Gary. So Gary says to me, Bronwyn's done this before. She will come. I'm pretty sure she'll just come back home in a couple of months' time. She leaves. She goes to her mother's. She has this hissy fit, and then she comes back. Now that's Gary's experience of Bronwyn, based on his relationship with Bronwyn. If I say to Gary, I'm not sure if that's what's happening this time, Gary. I actually don't hear Bronwyn saying that. I hear Bronwyn saying she hates your guts and doesn't want to be part of your life anymore. Or I say it better than that. What I'm doing is challenging this. Gary's relationship with Bronwyn gives him an authority, and his relationship with his children give him an authority to have an opinion about what the future will look like. I think she's going to come back. And so Gary, I guess I'm hearing two things from you. One is that you would really like for Bronwyn to come back one day. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah. And the other thing is that the experience you've had of Bronwyn in the past is that when she has left, she's eventually come back. Okay? And so you've got no reason to not think at this stage that she's not going to come back.
No, she'll come back.
She'll calm down and she'll come back. Okay. Might come back to that later on, but for now, it's important that I acknowledge that that's the position that you're taking. Okay? I've acknowledged it, and that's again going to help to calm his amygdala. The last one here, F, stands for fairness, and it is by far, I think, not even the most important. I think status and certainty and fairness are the biggies for mediation for the clients I'm seeing anyway. And that sense of fairness, that I not make assumptions about Gary, even though he looks and sounds like a perpetrator of coercive controlling violence from what Bronwyn has said. I cannot make assumptions about that. Fairness requires that I listen to Gary like he's the first person I've met in the family. And I give him the absolute opportunity to tell me his story, even though it's an ugly discourse, even though it's full of blame, even though I've heard Bronwyn and I know that the person sitting opposite me is an evil perpetrator of coercive controlling violence. I still need to say I'm going to create a space for Gary's story in my mind and genuinely engage with that story. That's the skill that I've got to cultivate. That's the professional skill of working with a client in FTR. You know, it's not okay for Gary to have a sense that we thought he was just full of bullshit. If we're going to do real work with Gary, we have to be able to meet him where he is and say, you know what, Gary, your story is really important to me. It's really important to me. We do it with Bronwyn. We have to do it with Gary if we're going to be fair. And when he thinks we're not being fair, his back will go up as quick as anything. Okay? Now, when we're in the mediation, I think you can use exactly these things as well. So when Gary is sitting in a mediation and he's feeling frustrated because Bronwyn is saying, well, the children aren't coming back, Gary. Well, what right have you got to say that? Okay, Gary, so can I just interrupt you there? So if I've understood what you're saying, is it that this is a decision that you two as parents should make together about where the children live, not just a decision that somehow gets made for you? Bronwyn, I'm wondering if you could respond to Gary about that. Why is it that you get to decide this? Where does Gary's opinion fit? Now, all of that stuff, and bring the challenge up to Bronwyn, all of that stuff is okay in a mediation, and it will calm Gary. Okay? All of that stuff is possible. And in the fairness one, it might be that Gary is interrupting Bronwyn continually. And so Gary is saying, Bronwyn starts talking, Gary talks over the top. As the mediator, I say, Gary, can you let Bronwyn finish? Gary, can you let Bronwyn finish? Gary, let Bronwyn finish. And we do it again and again and again as he keeps on talking over the top. Then Gary starts to talk, and for the first time ever, Bronwyn interrupts him. what do you think we have to do?
You have to stop it.
We have to stop Bronwyn and say, Bronwyn, let Gary finish. Because this, if even though we know that Bronwyn has only done it once and Gary has done it 100 times, Gary will turn to you and he will say, you told me to stop. Are you going to tell her to not interrupt me? Because is this fair or not? Fairness is absolutely essential in this model here. So, you know how we talk about the length of private sessions? In this model here, your private sessions need to be very similar in length. A minute or two out, but not one client getting half an hour and the other client getting 5 minutes. That can possibly happen with your therapeutic model, but in your settlement-focused model, you must be fair, scrupulously fair.
So give the blankie back.
Oh, okay.
You're on point with blankie.
Oh no.
Do that.
Does that kind of make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
So as a mediator, what I've found recently is cultivating this language has really helped to work with these kind of cases.
There's the article on this to read.
David Rock has an article. I've got it on my Dropbox. I'll give you the citation for it. It's not a peer-reviewed article. It's off his website. If you look up SCARF, someone will look it up. And I think if you look up SCARF and Rock, you'll come up with him.
Or you'll come up with like a million
Scarf.
hipsters.
And rock. No suggestions. I wanna do that.
May not be rough. It might be bolder.
Buy Scarf online. Scarf, a brain-based model for
Yeah.
collaborating with and influencing others.
Yeah,
First published in the Neuro Leadership Journal,
yeah, and that's his journal. If you open up the website,
yourbrainatwork.com. And it's PDF. Let me see.
his
Open.
journal is called a Neuro-Linguistic Journal or something, and I don't think it's a peer-reviewed journal. I think it's just his website.
Scarf, a brain-based model for collaborating with others and influencing others. David Rock. Yep.
There, how right was I?
I know.
I feel so much.
So, but added to favorites. How do I do that?
Okay, so in working with Gary, what we're doing when we're doing our pre-mediation appointment is letting him tell us our story. When we start to bring the challenge up to Gary, we use our 3-question rule, and we say, so Gary, I wonder if I can ask you some questions just about what you've told me so far. You said that Bronwyn is stopping the children from seeing you. You just pick on something. It doesn't really matter what it is. Why would Bronwyn do that? Why would she be stopping you from seeing you? What's your hunch? Well, she's jealous. Okay, right. If she was sitting here now, what would she say that? And what I'm doing is I'm creating. If you imagine this table as being Gary's story, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start pushing Gary's story back to the halfway line. So Gary's story only gets to occupy half of the table, so that we've got room for Bronwyn's story to exist. So I say, if Bronwyn was sitting here listening to you, what you're saying, would she agree with you? Is that what she would say would happen? Is there another story, Gary? What's your hunch? If Gary totally resists and says, well, I don't have, no, there's no other story. There's only my story. I will say something like, well, Gary, my experience as a mediator tells me that you wouldn't be in mediation if you two agreed on the story. And so my guess is there is another story, but we don't know what it is yet. Okay? So I'm not saying what the story is. I'm just saying, if there was only one story, then you wouldn't be in mediation. And so that creates the space for Bronwyn's story to come to the table. That's all I need to do in the mediation, in that pre, except for one other thing. And what we've started to do with these kind of cases here is in the pre-mediation, we ask the client for permission to do something. And what we've started to do is, and I'll get Renee to walk back into the room and instantly become Gary again. Okay, so we're now about 3/4 of the way through our pre-mediation interview, and we're in the case planning, that fifth finger stuff.
Yep.
Okay. I would do with Gary my three screening questions. Okay. So I'll just model that. So Gary, just to tie up just to make sure I've understood you and your family as well as I possibly can. There's some questions I just need to ask you about the history of safety in your family and any violence that's been in the family. Has there been a time where you might have felt unsafe in the broadest possible sense because of something that Bronwyn might have said or done?
Nah, but she can be a bit flighty. So
Yeah.
she has sort of come at me a few times, but I've just sort of,
So she's
Yeah.
come at you a few times, but you've kind of pushed her away. Is that what that means?
not pushed her away, but that's just, sit down, woman. I'm 6'2".
Yeah.
She's 5'3".
Okay, so you just sit her down.
Yeah.
Okay. Does that
You don't hit a woman, John.
right? Yeah. And so what when that happens, do you feel have you ever felt concerned for your safety?
No, not for my safety. I was just more concerned for her mental state. Just
Yeah. Okay, but
She
you
probably
also,
hurt herself.
so in terms of my first question, there hasn't. If you were in mediation and you needed to say something, would you feel at all afraid to say what you thought?
No.
Okay. Second question is, in terms of Bronwyn, do you think there's been a time where, if I ask that same question that I just asked of you, has there been a time where Bronwyn might have felt afraid for her safety because of something that you might have said or done? What do you think she would say?
no, I don't think so. It's her that creates the drama.
So,
I don't think she'll be afraid at all to say what she has to say.
so but you have no sense that she have any concern about saying things in mediation. And from your memory, there's nothing that's occurred that would give rise to any concerns from her. And your children, if I ask them the same question, has there been a time when they might have been afraid for their safety because of something that you or Bronwyn might have said or done? What do you think they would say?
I don't think so. They've seen Bronwyn act up, but I don't think they're scared. It's not good for kids to see that, but
Have you seen any indications that the kids are, I guess I would call it traumatised, that any behaviours that you thought, gee, I'm a bit worried about that? Okay. So at the moment, you've got no concerns about the safety of going in. Right, okay, thank you for that. I guess one of the things I'd like to know from you is, and I asked Bronwyn the same question, if during the mediation I'm watching how you and Bronwyn interact with each other, and I see things that I think, gee, the way you two are talking to each other is just causing more grief than it needs to. The way that either you're saying something to Bronwyn, or Bronwyn is saying something to you, the way you're treating Bronwyn, the way Bronwyn is treating you. If we went into a private session and had a chat, would you like me to point that out to you? If you were doing something that was getting in the way, you couldn't see it, but I could see it, would you like me to give you that feedback?
I think it's fine.
Now what I've done is I've asked the client for permission to give him feedback, and I'll do it with Bronwyn as well, during the mediation, because I am this neutral third party. And so I've built trust with Gary. I've now asked him for the right to give him feedback. So when he then is in the mediation and he is acting poorly, I go into a private session and I say, now Gary, remember way back at the start of mediation, you and I had a chat where I said, can I give you some feedback if I see something? Do you remember that? And he's probably pretty angry at this point. So he's steamed from the meeting, from having been in a bit of confrontation with Bronwyn. I'm wondering if I can give you some feedback now. Now, he might say, fuck off. Okay? And then he'll smile and he'll say, yeah, go on, what is it? Now, what we've found is, if we just roll the tape back and we don't ask for permission, we go into the mediation, and Gary and Bronwyn have been giving each other a bit of what for, and Gary has been acting very poorly. We go into a private session. Gary doesn't know that I want to give him feedback. So I say to Gary, can I give you some feedback on what I just saw? That, but he's very defensive. What? I haven't asked him for permission at a neutral time in the pre, and so I've got to catch all that up. And he's more likely to tell me to fuck off. I know the language is bad, but that's what he does. Okay. He will say, you know what? You don't get it. Get started. I said to a client once who was physically holding his daughter against a wall and screaming at her in her face. She was so afraid of going anywhere near him after that event. And he was very defensive in the mediation and saying she deserved it and all this kind of garbage. And I was quite frustrated with him, but felt like, this is in my very early days as a mediator, felt like because I was male, I was God's gift to working with violent men. For no other reason than my maleness. I had not a clue what to do. So I went into this private session with this man, and I said to him, Peter, what would you say to me if I said to you, I think you might have a problem with your anger? He said, I'd tell you to fuck off. And I said, well, I won't tell you that then, will I? I just recoiled back into my box. I can't need to look at me and just say, is that the best you've got? Whereas now, we were far more savvy. We would start by saying, remember in the pre-mediation we asked you for permission to give you feedback. Can I give you some feedback now? Now if he says no, I'm not going to give it to him. I said, okay, I'll wait. Because there is no point in giving a client feedback, no matter how much I want him to hear it. You know, Gary, you will sit here and you will listen to me because your behaviour is totally unacceptable. He's going, la, 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 la. He's not listening. I've got to work with Gary in a way that actually allows, that maintains the respect I have for him as a client, as a human being. He may be the most evil, he might be Adolf Hitler, but he deserves to be treated like a human being. That's probably a bit extreme, but you know what I mean. If I'm going to work in this work, I must be able to see the person sitting opposite me as human first, and then as secondly, as a person who is using violence to get their way, quite possibly not because of a mental illness or because of a attachment issue from their childhood, but possibly only because they know no other way to do it, and they're desperate and they're trying to hold on to something which is slipping away from them.
So would that be meeting their need for autonomy? So is he actually letting him to give you permission to give a feedback? So
yeah, that's right. It's autonomy. It absolutely taps into the autonomy. Do you want the feedback or not? He'll eventually say, yeah, okay, what do you got to say? And he has now accepted it. He's autonomous, and he can hear it or not. It's up to him. He can take it on board or not. I have had far more effective referrals into men's programs from that process than I have in saying to someone, I think you've got a problem with your anger. It just does not work. Okay? So, let's take early lunch, and when we come